what about Taiwan? Are people here working too much to maybe maintain a healthy work-life balance?
I think for a lot of us, when we are working for employees, I think there's a need to differentiate between what is excellence, having a sense of excellence in your work, which is good, right? But also understanding where are the boundaries of burnout.
The first focus of employers is they're looking at them like a resource to squeeze as much as possible, but that's not how human flourishing happens. That's not how innovation happens.
Hello and welcome to Connected. I'm Tomasz Koper, sitting in for Divya Gopalan, who is taking some much-needed time off from the anchor seat. Ask almost anyone in Taiwan and they'll tell you they work a lot. There's a common belief that long work hours are a feature of the East Asian work ethic. But it seems some numbers tell a different story. Taiwan's Labor Ministry compiles statistics on the average work hours in OECD countries and Taiwan. Take a look. Colombia tops the list with almost 2,400 annual hours. That works out to over 9 hours per day without accounting for national holidays and paid time off. Coming in third and the top in Asia is Singapore. Taiwan took the 6th spot, followed by Israel, South Korea, the United States, and the only European country in the top 10, Estonia. So does it mean that those countries get the most out of their workforce? Or can factors other than long hours help make employees more productive and creative? Well, to help us understand the relationship between productivity, employee satisfaction, and working conditions, we welcome Gerald Tan, who is a project director at Avodah People Solutions, speaking to us from Singapore. And joining us from Taipei, we have Tyler Prochazka, the executive director of the nonprofit organization UBI Taiwan. Gerald, we just saw that Singapore is the third in the world for average work time. How does that look like on the ground? Are people really working that much?
I think looking at that statistic there, it reflects, I think, a lot of the work culture and the work hours that are put in by many Singaporeans, the people who work here. They do put in a lot more hours, very often more than the 44 mandated hours for work per week. I think most people in Singapore, they would acknowledge that fact that they've been working really long hours. I think there are other surveys as well that have shown long work hours, maybe even other factors such as dissatisfaction with work as well. So yeah, I mean, it comes with the whole bunch. So I definitely resonate a lot with that statistic.
Well, Tyler, what about Taiwan? Are people here working too much to maybe maintain a healthy work-life balance?
I'd say that we have a lot of hours, but we're not necessarily working. At least we're not having meaningful work in a lot of those hours. And a lot of that comes from a culture that's passed down from the education system where quantity matters more than quality much of the time. And so you're just pushing and pushing to have students or workers put in as much as they can because that's the culture, is that you're going to work yourself to success until you can't work anymore. But I think it's the opposite result. It's counterproductive because from what I see from a lot of the folks that I talk to is that most of the time they don't even know what they're doing at work, or their manager is just kind of throwing meaningless paperwork at them that doesn't really produce much value for the company, let alone society. So I think that's where we need to have a rethink about, do more hours really translate into more meaningful work?
Well, you raise a lot of very good points there, and we're going to dig into them in today's show. But first, managers, take note. A pizza party once a month is not enough to keep your employees happy. For an overview of what actually matters in job satisfaction, we reached out to Eleni Kyrtsia, the founder of Empathy Echoes, a company which aims to enhance workplace emotional intelligence. Take a look.
Yes, pay is important. We can't deny that. It is important we have a salary that is sustainable, and it allows us to have the flexibility to live a life with dignity, to support ourselves, our families, our loved ones. A culture that actually allows the employee to thrive. allows the employee to grow in a way they want, to enrich themselves, their character, their skills, have a career that they are proud of, to go to work and actually feel that they're part of something, that they belong in an organization that values them, values the work they do. Another one aspect, the team is, we spend with the people in our team and our workplace so much time. And having a team that actually is invested in one another. So we feel that they care about our growth, they care about our well-being. Our managers are invested to see us thrive, to see us succeed. And I wanted to close with the sustainable working conditions. It is so crucial to align with a sustainable work schedule. We can never discuss about a good work ethics, good workplace, if we don't keep in mind that we have to have a sustainable work schedule. We have to stick to flexibility. We have to allow employees to have flexibility. Because then it's like we're giving them power in their work-life balance, in how they're gonna schedule their life.
Gerald, flexibility. So during the COVID pandemic, we've seen working from home, we've seen hybrid work modes, and a lot of people were saying, this is the future of work. This is how we all are going to work in the future. But now employers are summoning employees back to the office. So what happened to that future?
I think it is still here. Working from home, flexible work policies is a main feature, it's a mainstay. It's not going to go away. Even though there's a pushback by employers to want to have people coming back to the office. I think what we are seeing is perhaps the rebalancing away from the fully work from home, but coming with some form of hybrid policies for telecommuting, flexible place, flexible time. This is definitely something that many companies will need to start to focus on because many of the employees, new hires, very often during the interviews, they would ask, what is your work from home policy? Do you have a flexi work policy for me? And these questions are increasingly more. People are making decisions based on these policies. It doesn't matter like what the video said, it doesn't matter how much the pay is, but if today there is a flexibility for people to organize their life and their work in a more meaningful manner, I think that is what would draw people into the workplace.
Well, Tyler, in Taiwan, the lockdowns happened later and generally lasted for shorter than elsewhere in the world. And because of that, working from home or hybrid work modes never really took root. So did the COVID pandemic change anything at all for us workers in Taiwan?
Yeah, that's a question that I've been thinking about a lot, is not just Taiwan, but around the world. How did the pandemic affect our mindsets, our policies in terms of permanent change? And surprisingly, I think that it's less permanent adjustment than I would like to see. And especially in Taiwan, in some sense, we were extremely fortunate that we didn't quite have the effect that other countries had in terms of the pandemic. But at the same time, that meant that there was even less discussion here about what ways we can change our policies to improve that work-life balance. And I want to kind of look at the idea of flexibility in terms of building trust, because I think for a worker and for an employer, the idea is that the employer should have a relationship with an employee that they trust, and you build that trust through flexibility, and then you're rewarded by the employee in terms of higher productivity, you're rewarded in terms of less burnout, less turnover. And I think that's a mindset shift that's really important for Taiwan, for employers, is that, like I was saying, it's all about quantity, just pushing out as much as you can for as little cost as possible. And we really neglect the quality aspect. We should be building up the highest quality employees as possible, and we should be building that through trust and creating a relationship rather than squeezing out every last bit as you can for as minimal salary as possible.
Well, we will talk about trust a little later again. But first, Gerald, I want to go back to another point that Eleni has made about company culture. So we hear phrases like, "Oh, this is a part of our company culture. This is the core of our company culture." But what does that word "culture" even mean, really, in the professional setting?
Yeah, I think culture is really important. Something that you don't put on a job description, or rather, you can't validate it through a job description. But when it really boils down to the essence, it's just about an environment where it helps people to be their best. I think that's what culture is about. When we think about culture, I'm thinking about leadership. I'm thinking about how leadership shapes the policies to help every member of the company feel valued, invest in their development so that they can grow, and like what Tyler was saying, right? Not treating them as a robot just to churn out the hours and churn out the work. I think this shift in thinking is accelerating right now, maybe more than years before, decades before. I think the younger generation of workers, as we have seen with the millennials, with the Gen Zs, a lot of them, they are starting to integrate, having worldviews of work and life integrated together. When they are no longer seeing their employment as just a place to get salary, they are seeing how can the employer and my employment help me to be a better person. How does what I do help me to grow? So there are thoughts like this increasingly in many of the younger workers, and companies really need to start to think about culture not just as saying something politically correct, but they really need to walk the talk, build an environment where people truly feel accepted and appreciated. Yeah.
Well, Tyler, can you identify some major features of the Taiwanese work culture that we would see in a typical company here?
I'd say, like I mentioned, the first focus of employers is they're really looking to minimize cost. They're not seeing their labor as an investment. And they're also, I like the term of robots, because they are looking at them like robots. They're looking at them like a resource to squeeze as much as possible. But that's not how human flourishing happens. That's not how innovation happens. And I think that's where the stagnation in Taiwan comes from. A lot of young people tell me that they don't know what they're doing at work, or what the purpose of their work is. They feel like they're lost for that reason. So it's not just about salaries. It's also about providing meaningful jobs that actually allow folks to pursue the passions and interests that they have.
Right. And you did mention trust and building trust earlier, so I want you both to take a look at this. For most people, the word office brings to mind images of drab cubicles jammed into a soulless space where people count down the minutes until the end of their shift. But there are companies that have a very different idea of what makes a good work environment. One such company is PicCollage, a startup behind a popular photo collage app. We visited their offices in Taipei to find out more.
PicCollage is a Taiwan-based company behind a popular photo collage app. It's gained a reputation for offering exceptionally good working conditions. Unlimited paid leave, no fixed office hours, free lunches and dinners, ability to work remotely, space and equipment for practicing hobbies. These are just some of the perks that most workers in Taiwan can only dream of.
I don't think I have a favorite room or a favorite place, but anywhere that there's a couch or a beanbag, because I love sitting on very comfortable seats when I'm working. And I also enjoy all the private rooms that we have, because we also have a lot of meetings online where we need a quiet space to talk. So I really appreciate that as well.
I like the fact that we have musical instruments. So we have the piano, and then we have some more in the back. So we have a guitar. We actually have a drum kit too. So when you maybe after 5 or 6, a couple of people can get together and play, and that's really nice.
The company also claims to foster a culture of trust and independence.
I still remember like my first day here. A question I often pop up in my mind is like, am I allowed to do this? Am I really allowed to do this? Just lying down on the couch or even lying down on the floor if I want to. So I feel like here, like nobody will really judge how you work.
From previous company, although the environment is good, but most of the decision is much like top down. So the boss will decide all the things for us. But here, we actually encourage people to have their own opinions and we can openly discuss with it. I like the culture here.
All these amenities and perks certainly keep the employees happy, but at the end of the day, how does it all translate to the company's bottom line?
I think it's paying off, like both in terms of when they come in, how people work, as well as when new people come in, they're attracted to this place as a place to hang out and maybe some place that they wanted to apply to.
There are also concerns about how this model can scale and keep up with the company's growth.
We're going through a bit of a transition in terms of like our scale, the number of people we have here, and I think is the term sometimes is from tribe, I think, to village, right? So the size, and there's a lot of tension there in between like maybe sometimes there is a need for greater clarity in the way that we communicate, or we might start to need like processes and systems that can help kind of empower people.
So we're about 100 people now, and I think we're also hitting another one of these, inflection points where we'll need to change how we do some things while keeping, the core parts of our culture as well.
Tomasz Koper, Wesley Usthuizen, and Leslie Liao for Connected.
For a full version of that video, you can visit our YouTube channel or the TaiwanPlus website. Gerald, does being able to hold a meeting in a ball pit really help employees be more productive or creative?
Wow, I think that's a really fascinating perspective, right? For me personally, I think I'll be distracted. But on the point of like providing all these benefits, I think there is a difference between providing such benefits and really building trust. You could provide all the perks, but you still have very dysfunctional teams that don't trust each other. So, the amount of balls in the ball pit is not going to make the unhappiness between team members go away. So I think while companies continue to provide such perks, I think there must be more intentional effort to really build the interpersonal relationships, the way work is done, respect for co-workers, how leaders manage their people, how work is organized. Those are things that are perhaps valuable or even more valuable than the perks that come about. So I definitely think it's insufficient just to provide those nice, colorful balls in the pit.
Well, there were a few other perks, so like free meals, unlimited time off, no fixed work schedule, and they all sound great, as well as the trust-based approach, and that clearly works for a team of 100 people. But would it scale for a bigger company or the workforce in general?
I'd say the proof is in multiple studies that look at 4-day work weeks. I mean, this has just been shown over and over with thousands of employees where they were looking at how did the 4-day work week affect the overall profitability of the company. And in some cases, it went up. And so there's not a need for us to squeeze everything out of these folks. And that trust, I think, does go a long way to building a relationship where somebody wants to go to work, where they can concentrate on what really makes meaning at the company. And I think that that the point about the rules is really well taken, because if your focus is on building so many rules, then you're probably building the wrong team. And you probably have the wrong leadership, because you're focused completely on the sticks and the punishment rather than the carrot of why I should be going to work in the first place. So it's not just salary, it's not just benefits, it's the holistic picture of why am I going to work, and is this a place where I can find meaning in my life and create a balance with the other things that I want to accomplish.
One other thing, Gerald, one other thing that was mentioned in the video is autonomy and how people like sort of being more independent as they go through their workday and as they check off the tasks off the list. How important is autonomy to job satisfaction in general?
I think autonomy is perhaps one of the most important factors, because I think if I just think about the self-determination theory, right, of human beings, autonomy is one of the core conditions where people want to feel like they have the flexibility and the choice to choose what they want to do, to choose their workplace, to choose their work, to choose how they want to live their life. So it's pretty important for them to have a voice. And in saying that, I just want to also bring in the other side, right? It's not like all the time you'll be able to get what you want, because you have people pulling in all different directions. But really, autonomy is about having made that considered choice, being able to express, consider what is it that you need, you want, and then also balancing up with what the environment is able to offer. So most definitely, it's important. But I think it's not getting what you want, but it's more about recognizing that you have certain needs and you're able to express those needs, and the environment listens, they consider, and then whatever happens is whatever happens. Yeah.
Well, we are quickly running out of time for this episode, but I want to end on a more prescriptive note rather than just descriptive. So, Tyler, Taiwanese economy was built around as a manufacturing hub around basically an assembly line, and so many of those ideas of how to run a business like that are still enduring here. So how can we change the mindsets of Taiwanese managers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have an older generation that is still running many of these companies, and so those ideas have stuck with us in every sector of society. Like I said, it's coming from the education sector on down, and that pervasive idea is really difficult to shake. Our prescription, obviously, at UBI Taiwan is that we think people need freedom through financial freedom first, and then a lot of the other things can come from that. Because I love the point about autonomy. When you are forced into survival mode and you're working on survival mode, that's not good for companies. That's certainly not good for the individual. It's not good for society. You look at the studies about poverty, not only is it's literally lowering your IQ, but the next generation, I mean, not only do we have a crisis about having children, but if you're a child growing up in poverty, that can lower your prospects in terms of brain development and career prospects for the rest of your life. So autonomy should be our goal, and the easiest way to do that is looking at those folks who really need that financial assistance, and we should be improving our cash assistance and welfare programs here in Taiwan.
Well, Gerald, what about Singapore? What would it take to change minds over there?
Yeah, I think in Singapore, things are slowly shifting. We've got, I think recently, the state has put in place guidelines for flexible work arrangements, mandating, they are encouraging all companies to start to consider employees' requests for flexi place, flexi time, flexi load kind of work. I think there's this pushback that is stronger, maybe perhaps more acutely felt, because Singapore has a small workforce. We're a small country, and companies, they cannot afford to lose someone because it's harder to replace that person. So I think right now managers, it's not easy for them. Many managers are aware that they will need to start to build up their abilities, create policies to support, the needs for the increasingly more needs of flexible work requests. So I think that's what's happening in Singapore. We are already heading in that direction, but it's not going to be a smooth ride.
All right, one last question for both of you before we finish today. Assuming that changing mindsets both in Taiwan and Singapore and elsewhere in the world might take a few business days, what can individuals do before that happens to keep themselves from burning out? Tyler, what do you think?
I do think that you have to focus your energy on finding the right employer, because the salary is one thing, and that really is important. But if you have the wrong team, like I said, and you don't have that trust, and you can't trust your management or your boss, you're going to hate it there. I mean, there's folks at the highest paid consulting firms in the world, financial institutions, and those folks burn out after 1 or 2 years because they're just working, and it's totally the wrong work-life balance. So it's not just about salary, it's also about, can I find meaning in this place? Can I find a relationship and trust with the management? And that would be my first focus if I was coming out of university today.
Gerald, what about you?
Yeah, I love the question because it's very possible that the company and the environment is really supportive of the employee, but sometimes employees themselves don't know how to take care of themselves, right? So I think for a lot of us, when we are working for employees, I think there's a need to differentiate between what is excellence, having a sense of excellence in your work, which is good, right? But also understanding where are the boundaries of burnout. Some of us, we burn out and we don't even know we burn out, and we think that we are trying to do good work because that is expected of us. So I think every one of us, we need to start to acknowledge where is that line, and sometimes the best way is to listen to yourself. If you're not sleeping well, if you're not eating well, you're not feeling good about certain things that's happening, you're feeling the loss of motivation, hey, these are telltale signs of burnout. So that's where you might want to take a step back and ask yourself, what's really happening there?
Right. Well, let's hope that the situation improves for all workers everywhere. Thank you both very much for being on the show today. Tyler Prochazka, joining us from Taipei, the executive director of the nonprofit organization UBI Taiwan, and Gerald Tan from Singapore, project director at Avodah People Solutions. Thank you both for being on the show. And for our viewers everywhere, it's been good to have your company. If you've enjoyed today's episode or have anything you would like to add to the dialogue, join the conversation on our social media. And remember, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay connected.